I'm offended. Deeply, deeply offended. I am so offended by this. Everything just offends everything. That offends me. That offends me. That offends me. And yes, this movie offends me. Isn't it interesting living in the times that we do? Just how information is spread and what grabs a person's attention. And I'm not one necessarily to give into conspiracy theories, but sometimes I wonder if some of these controversies, for lack of a better term, if they're not sometimes started by the production company as a means of drawing attention to an otherwise decent but not a wholly memorable film as a way of garnering more attention and more clicks. Like, because this is just, when you take away all of the bitching and moaning and complaining everybody did about this movie, about things that are relatively minor, this film it's not bad. It's definitely not a bad movie. It's very enjoyable. The animation is great. The characters are interesting. You know, it's just, but it's not, there's nothing revolutionary about it. We'll talk more about that here in a second, but it's fairly boilerplate, all things considered. And this is one that I don't know the exact production history of, but I have a feeling it was meant to be released in 2020, and we all know what happened there. And for some reason, instead of going to the theaters, they decided to put it right on Disney Plus, and so it was in danger of just kind of being lost in the jumble. And so sometimes you think, if not for this controversy, would anybody have really noticed this film, or would it have just kind of passed into obscurity, as it kind of has? Not so much obscurity, but you notice the controversy happened. It was the talk of the town, and then it died down, and no one has mentioned this movie since. So, again, I'm not saying they actually did it. I'm just saying if it ever came out that that's what happened, it would not surprise me necessarily. But, and again, I know I'm coming very late to the party on this one, but let's put my 2 cents in. So before we get going, what is the film about? Okay, so here we have the Disney Pixar film about a young Chinese-Canadian girl who, upon reaching a certain age, she finds that when she becomes emotionally overwrought, be it with positive or negative emotion, she turns into a giant red panda. There are, there's traditional reasons, there are family reasons, there's spells and supernatural things. But generally speaking, what this is a very thinly veiled metaphor for puberty, for a young woman going through puberty, changing from a little girl into an adult, or at least a biological adult, if not an actual one, and the friction that causes internally within the person themselves, and externally with family and friends, and how relationships change as a person does. And, a coming-of-age story in every sense of the word. So I feel before I talk about this movie, I'm going to, this isn't clickbait or anything, but let's get the red panda in the room, out of the way. Let's talk about the controversy. So what this film, everything I read when this film is that the big controversy in this was the fact that the mother in this film offers the child tampons and pads, and that they show tampons and pads in this movie. And of course that, depending on which Facebook or Twitter post you read, on the one side, it's "this spells the end of human civilization. How dare Disney do this? They're thrusting all of this in our faces. Oh, won't somebody please think of the children?" On the other side, it's get over it, you Puritan, buckle-shoed killjoys. Stop being so, overprotective. It's a natural thing. Get over it. And these are kind of the two sides of the argument. And as I watch this movie, my personal opinion is that the truth, as is so often the case in human endeavors, it lies somewhere in the middle. On the one hand, I think the controversy about this film is a little bit more from a parent perspective or an adult perspective, a little bit more than just the mother offers the daughter tampons. All right? This film, as I said, it is about puberty, and that's not a bad thing, but the subtext of this film is not subtle. I mean, just from the fact that it's a red panda, okay? And there's other imagery and other metaphors which are very overt and very, very, in your face about this is what we are talking about. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think it was all done in the best way possible. But I can totally understand how an unsuspecting adult sitting their children down to watch this thinking it's going to be, Wall-E, look at the cute robot, fall in love, look at, Monsters, Inc., look at, the big fuzzy monster being cute, Brave, look at the girl and her mother fighting when she turns into a bear, thinking it's going to be along those lines, and suddenly this imagery is really smacked in your face. And it's a lot. And like I say, I was kind of taken aback by just how much there was. And I can understand how that can catch a parent or an adult off guard and kind of make them go, this was not what I was expecting. And depending on what age your kids are, I can understand that you can be a little pissed off that now you have to answer some questions that maybe you weren't ready to answer, or you may feel your kids aren't ready to hear. And that's a decision and a choice every parent kind of has to make individually. Am I ready to talk about this? And are my kids ready to hear it? I can't tell you the yes or no on that. That's for you as a parent to decide. But I can understand how you could be a little taken aback by this movie and unprepared for it. On the other hand, again, the imagery and the subtext is very, very obvious, but I think in a lot of cases it's obvious only if you are an adult and know what they're talking about. I think for a lot of kids, a lot of the imagery is going to fly right over their heads. When they're older and watching the movie, they go back and rewatch it. Then I think they may see something in it they didn't see before and go, oh, wow, that's what this was about. Which is a sign of a good piece of art, something that has more layers the older you get and the more it stands up. So, and I think just the thing with the pads or the tampons, that's an easy thing. If a kid asks, what is that? It's something that teenage girls need. We'll talk about it when you're older if you don't want to get into it right then. So I can understand both sides. I get why some people might be a bit taken aback by this, but I also think that in the grand scheme of things, it's not that bad. So, yes, that whole introduction, almost 10 minutes worth of talking to basically say it's somewhere in the middle. Yeah, I know. Great, great contribution to the discourse there, Drive Home Reviews, but, whatever. So that's where I stand on the controversy. On the movie itself, it's all right. Like, I didn't have anything really, there's no real problems with it. As I've said, I think the animation is really good. The animation, especially when our heroine turns into the red panda, is especially good. The red panda is adorable in this film. And I think they use the metaphor very, very well. I think you're kind of expecting smart writing and clever clever subtext and metaphor from a Pixar movie. Even though I am not a Pixar fan, I acknowledge that they do some thoughtful work, you know? But, and I think this film is definitely with them. They put some thought into this, and they really planned it out very well. I like a lot the multiracial, multi-generational cast. Our heroine is Chinese. There are Hispanic kids, white kids, Korean kids, black kids. You know, there's like, it feels like everybody is represented, and I don't feel it was ever in any way of pandering. Pandering. Yeah. Anyway, so it's interesting that they chose to set this in 2022. Jesus, 2002. 2002. So many twos, so many zeros, and none of them in the right place. Interesting, and I guess that's because it was the rise of, that was the kind of the high point of the boy band, and the girls wanting to go see a concert is one of the primary driving forces of this film. So I get that's why they did, but an interesting time frame, especially since, you know, looking at all the kids having flip phones, you know, that almost looks like the Stone Age now. One thing I also liked about this movie, especially in terms of our main relationship, that of course being the mother to her daughter, I found myself, as I was watching the film, noticing that both characters had multiple layers to them. And the daughter, that they had a good relationship, but the daughter is coming of age, she's growing up, she's starting to have thoughts of her own, and they're starting to run in conflict with the mother. She's not trying to be disobedient or disrespectful, but that's kind of what happens when you turn that age. And of course the mother, who has always had a very dutiful, very respectful child, is now having a hard time dealing with the fact that that's not who she is anymore, you know? And I think they do a nice job in most cases of balance between the two characters. You can see both points of view. It's not a situation, at least through most of the film, and I'll talk about that here in a second, where the daughter is completely right. I need to live my own life. I need to do what's important for me, and you need to just let it go. And the mother is not just all, I'm an evil harpy who doesn't understand and, you know, doesn't care that you want to be your own person. They didn't go black and white with it. They let them have multiple layers. They're both completely right and they're both completely wrong. And in other words, they're real people. And that caught me off guard a little bit for the first chunk of this movie, because I'm so used to films like this saying it has to be one way or the other. And the fact that there is a multiple layer to the relationship and multiple ways of seeing the same situation is, I won't say revolutionary, but it's a breath of fresh air. The characters felt more like an actual mother and daughter than they did than a lot of other films of this genre. Now, that being said, I think one of the problems I do have with this film is when it comes down to the mandatory action-heavy climax of the film, I do feel like they really do they literally make the mother a monster. They literally make the mother a monster that the daughter has to fight off and, you know, force her independence on her. And I feel like that really is a slap in the face a little bit. I felt like that, and it was very out of tone for me with the rest of the picture. You know, now I would have gone along with it if, I know this sounds boring, but I'm sure Pixar, you know, being the geniuses everyone says they are, could have found a way to make it work. If instead of them having to have an actual fight, a physical altercation with yelling, you know, like it's an episode of Party of Five, If they could have had the same action sequence with them explaining themselves, with the daughter explaining and not having to be an action scene and beat her mother up, literally. Seeing things, they needed a little bit of a Freaky Friday moment. So I just feel like this ending is very out of step with the rest of the film, tonally and thematically, where it says, okay, it's the end, we need this action-heavy ending, so therefore we have to have someone be the de facto heel, so we make it the mother, and I feel like that does fly in the face of what they were trying to do with the entire rest of the movie. So I also have to say, and this is one of the things that I mentioned at the beginning, is that one of the reasons why this film is not, to me, anything really outside of the initial controversy, anything to really get that worked up about, is that we have seen this before. And as I was thinking about it, we've seen it a lot from Pixar. I made this comment about the Lego movies a while back, that there were a lot of father-son disagreements and chasms in the relationship in those Lego movies, and that you're starting to wonder, are you okay? That Ninjetti one especially was like very egregious. And as I'm thinking back, it's like, Pixar has a lot of those too. A lot of these parent and child, child wanting more independence, parent not wanting to give it to them for various reasons, and the child basically having to, tell their parents, fuck off, I'm an adult now. That happens a lot. Finding Nemo, Brave, this movie, I mean, it is a constant theme with them. Which is funny, because, like other films of theirs, like Up is all about trying to find a parental figure, and these films are about telling your parental figure to go fuck themselves. I'm being overly vulgar there. That's not what they're saying, but you get my point. Like, so this kind of like I mentioned with Luca last year is, Luca, another one. There's another one. Right there. About these underwater movies all being very similar. I think a lot of these Pixar films, I think a lot of these adults these people are either working through their own teenage trauma, or they currently have teenagers and they're going through it. I can't help but notice that this theme seems to pop up quite a bit. And you start wondering if the people at Pixar, if they need a little help there. If they need we need to catch them to cradle this a little bit. Is there, just saying. This hasn't been a very good critique, in my opinion. There's not much really to say about it outside of the controversy. It's a fine movie. Animation is fine. Characters are enjoyable. The story is interesting. Yeah, the characters are fairly well-rounded, but it's fairly boilerplate. There's nothing really that'll make it stand out. It'll be something that I think you watch it the first time, you'll really dig it, and then it'll just be another name on the shelf. I'm sure some people it'll be their absolute favorite thing. Like I say, the red panda is adorable and really, really well animated, but I don't know if this is going to light anyone's world on fire. It's decent enough, fun time. Don't regret watching it, but I don't know if I'll ever feel the need to watch it again unless one of my kids wants to. So then, there you go. So that's about all I have to say. So let's wrap this up. So final grade for Turning Red, I'm gonna go a solid B. I was leaning more towards the B-, but there's nothing really to take points off of, except for just, again, seen it before, been there, done that, it's a thing. But on the grand scheme, it's a fine movie, it's enjoyable, and, make your own decisions. That's what I have to say about the controversy. So, alright, so thank you for joining me, thanks for catching up with these movies with me, and as always, drive safe, and I will see you at the movies.